study the built environment as an autonomous issue, not something that we created, but as something that we can contribute to. What the architects are talking about is the role of the architect, which is not relevant at all.
Personally, I'm not so interested in the question of what is the role of the architect. Actually, maybe it's a question which is decapacitating in general. What is your role? Because any innovation starts with the freedom to go beyond your role.
Ich lehne Sippenhaftung ab, oder? Insofern, der Architekt, den gibt's für mich nicht.
When you start as an architecture student, you're steeped in a culture, like a tea bag, and most of it is unconscious. It's like dropping into a foreign country. And you start using words that no one else uses, and you start developing gestures that no one else develops. And in those days, you started wearing only black and white, because that's what everyone did. Their relationships fall apart, their health falls apart, but they come up with a really great design and a beautiful presentation.
The role of the architect in every project is different. Sometimes you're the psychiatrist of a family who needs an answer to their daily or marital problems. They ask you to come and reshape the bathroom. I mean, but there's something much deeper behind it, below it.
The contradiction is that on the one hand, we claim that everything we design, everything that is built can be architecture or should be architecture. And at the same time, we want architecture to be special. Now, how can everything be special? My father had a library. He was a civil engineer. And I was interested in books, so at a certain point I found a book about the recent Dutch architecture, which was the Amsterdam School architecture. And I liked that very much, that book. And so I don't know exactly what came first. But from very early on, I decided that I wanted to go to the Netherlands and become an architect in Holland. But of course, I was also familiar with the Indonesian kampungs. Not that I was particularly consciously trying to find out how people live. Just when you take a walk through the woods, you come also in the kampungs, and you see what is going on there. And what I remember is that they were also so clean and well organized. When the Japanese occupied Indonesia, the Dutch people were sort of herded in small compounds, closer and closer. So the men were taken away, the women and the children in separate places. And because I was very young, I was still part of the children, so for quite a while, we lived in one room with other people. But eventually, it became more and more of a kind of concentration camp. And we were put to work in farms farther outside. At that time, I got dysentery, which was one of the major problems, of course, with the bad food that you got. So I could no longer do the work, and I had to check into the sort of makeshift hospital. And I spent the last year in the hospital. I do remember that I celebrated the fact that I was in the hospital for 1 year. To sum it up, to me it was a positive experience. You learn to know yourself, and you learn to live, that you need very little to live, which I always appreciated. So it was not a traumatic experience for me. When I got better, I decided I wanted to go to Holland, whereas my parents and my sister wanted to stay in Indonesia. So I got myself a job on a transportation ship that brought back families from Indonesia to Holland.